Welcome everyone. This is episode 46 of the Transmaxxing podcast, and today's topic is women's sports. So this is somewhat of a holy cow in Western societies and a lot of countries where sports is viewed as something very important that should be promoted by governments, and women's sport is viewed as something we have to protect from supposed trans women, because people think that if trans females are allowed to compete in women's sports, then they will take over completely. And of course this isn't happening. There have been sports where trans females have been allowed for decades, and still we don't really see them winning much. But there is actually a general problem with women's sports. A lot of the time with sports in general, it's basically about how much you can get away with using performance-enhancing drugs. And sure, they do test against them, but people always find ways around them. For example, in Eastern Germany, they pumped their female athletes full of anabolic steroids or something like that, pretty much. And for some reason, this wasn't discovered until documents were recovered years later. And a lot of those females didn't even know they were getting doped because they didn't really consent to it. And the doping test didn't discover anything, so even though they looked like men pretty much back then, they were allowed to compete in the female category. Generally, the rules that were in place before that worked was that you were required to suppress testosterone with medications if you were a trans female, and after 12 to 24 months you were allowed to compete in the female category. There wasn't really anything wrong with it, we didn't see trans female really doing too well. But then of course conservatives started to attack this, because they used this to attack trans rights in general. So we have this famous photo where a man is beating females in sports, and a lot of conservative media outlets using this image because people will assume that this is a trans female. This is actually not the case. It's actually a trans male who were forced to compete in the female category. He didn't even want to. He wanted to compete with men, but because they didn't want to acknowledge him as a male, because this would go against the transphobic policy and transphobia in general, he ended up competing against other females. And of course they didn't stand a chance against someone taking testosterone medication.
So a female on testosterone is going to have a significant advantage against any other female that's not taking testosterone or any other performing enhancing drugs.
Yeah, obviously.
So in that case, it was really stupid to force that person in particular to compete against females, even though he wanted to compete against males.
I mean, transphobia and stupidity kind of goes hand in hand though. It's not about making sense, it's about how can we be as transphobic as possible, even regardless of consequences for society.
I think for trans females competing in female sports, I don't know if 12 months is necessarily enough time for, obviously within a few months your testosterone will be lowered enough to be within this female range, but I think at least 2 years is needed to kind of let the rest of your muscle break down, because you're still going to retain a decent amount of muscle that you were able to build before.
And I think the reason why we don't see trans women doing too well in women's sports is because they are up against people who are using performance enhancing drugs, because basically everyone is at the top level at the more physical sports, where it is about physical performance more than anything, endurance or physical strength. Of course, then if you're not using performing enhancing drugs to cheat, you will not have a chance of getting to the top. And because trans females don't cheat like that, they want to be often feminine. They don't really stand a chance at the elite level, like even if they have some advantage over females who are not cheating, it's not enough to beat the ones using all those like drugs and stuff.
I mean, yeah, even in like biking, that's like a good example. Like cycling, like the Tour de France, a lot of the top athletes were doping, they were cheating, they were using performance enhancing drugs and having, the people basically lie about it on their drug test. So it was like they were clean, but like, yeah, you're right. Everyone at the top level is abusing some type of new, new and improved steroid or some type of drugs. So
And just think about it. Let's say I wanted to cheat in some sports. Like all I have to do is to roid up myself for weightlifting, for example. And then before I start competing, I stop taking the drugs, but I still maintain all the muscle I build on those very harmful synthetic hormones and everything. Like I will still have an huge advantage, and I will not find anything if I stop taking it in time. It will have left the body, they cannot find it at that point.
exactly. So you could take stuff like HGH, human growth hormone. You could take peptides. Some type of synthetic test can get out of your system relatively quick. So, I mean, depending on the half life of everything, but like you said, you're going to be able to build a lot of like just muscle mass and strength. And a lot of that is like muscle memory that is retained for a while. So even, you could get off of it for a while enough to pass a drug test. It's still there. So, yeah.
To be fair, there are some sports where that isn't really a problem. For example, with climbing, you don't really need to use drugs there because it's more about skills when it comes to like maneuvering yourself. Like anything that is about like the brain itself, it's basically impossible to effectively cheat, like chess or snooker or darts. There are so many of them where you can't really cheat like that.
Other sports I think of like immediately is like snowboarding and skiing, where obviously you probably don't want to be as big. You want to be as nimble as possible to be able to maneuver around stuff like that. It's really like at the end of the day, it shouldn't even be an issue what people are taking as long as they're following the rules. Set guidelines are in place. Who cares like who competes as male or female, in my opinion at least.
And the thing with sports is that what we should focus on is to allow people to do sports for fun because it's entertainment, because it's a way to like get out, do something with friends or whatever, and that should be what we focus on, not all this like elite crap or like if you don't start early in life, you don't really stand a chance. And this is the other problem with a lot of sports that even if you don't have to use like drugs for it, if you don't start when you're really young, you will struggle at elite level because you will be behind. So a lot of the time, the people who win, they started really young and were trained really hard.
I was gonna say I think golf is a big one of those because someone like Tiger Woods who started playing when he was super young, like you retain all of that skill and like muscle memory and just like basically just how to play the sport. You eventually you have years under your belt, and it doesn't matter in the like how much in the world that the person has only been playing for 2 years versus someone who's been playing for 20. The person with 20 years of experience just has all that knowledge under their belts. So it doesn't matter like how much like drugs or stuff the other person takes if they're relatively new. Plus, a lot of it comes down to genetics too. Some people are just better naturally at certain sports like running, basketball, stuff like that. You're not going to have a 5'8" dude in the NBA. I'm just saying that's just not going to happen.
I'm not sure if drugs even help in golf in the first place. Like, is there really anything people are using there?
I highly doubt people are, but I guess you could possibly hit the ball further on your drive. I don't know.
Yeah, that would be pretty much it. Not really necessary, I guess.
But yeah, I think the biggest issue that people have right now is, I guess, because of all the elitism and scholarships and stuff that people say that trans women are taking opportunities away from cis female women. I don't think that's the case. I think they're basically overblowing it. In maybe a few cases, like Leah Thomas, she might win more at the female than she did in the male competition, but it's not like people are being denied scholarships. Like they've already been accepted to the colleges anyway, so they're not, in my opinion, they're not being denied any more opportunities than they already had.
There's also another problem with a lot of sports that people aren't really talking about is that a lot of physical sports don't really promote having like a natural feminine appearance. It basically promote having like very small breasts and basically being like a male with like XX chromosomes or whatever. It kind of goes against what we actually want females to look like.
Exactly. If you look at like contact sports like wrestling or something like that, yeah, they're typically not going to have your effeminate body. Like they're going to look more masculine by default. It's just the way of the sport. I think a few other sports are like that. Like I don't know, possibly like field hockey or something like that.
Yeah, but even take for example running, like anything where you have to like perform and you have like big breasts is going to be like a disadvantage. This is another problem, like this could like push women towards like having either mastectomies or like removing both the breasts just to perform better.
Was gonna say that's actually a really good point. Like, so say a female, cis female wants is competing in running, or like marathon distance running, track field, stuff like that. Yeah, so having more mass on your chest would put you at a disadvantage, and so this they wouldn't even have to take any hormones or drugs or anything like that. All they would have to do is get a double mastectomy, and they're all set. I guess they would have like, you know, through plastic surgery have a advantage at that point now, but there's like no rules against that because of they're still technically female, right? They still have XX chromosome, whatever. They have all of the sex organs of a female.
Yeah, and also there are some women who are like naturally flat chested or very small breasts and then they don't have to do the mastectomy.
Exactly. So it comes down to again genetics and how you're born. Some people are just born to naturally be better at certain things than other people. So, and I think that's in Leah Thomas's case, she was like, for lack of a better term, built to be or born to be like a swimmer, and if that's what she wanted to do, she's going to succeed regardless of which category she's placed in.
I mean, they say that she did poorly before, but wasn't that when she had already started HRT and was still forced in the male category? I think it was something like that.
Yeah, exactly. That's why she was like ranked 900th or something like that. It's because she was already putting herself at a disadvantage compared to the rest of the male swimmers. And that's the thing, like, there's no telling who else she's competing against. Those other people could have also been taking stuff to improve their performance while she was actually actively, you know, making herself worse.
Yeah, of course, like pretty much everyone. I assume that like swimming is the same as like cycling, weightlifting is about the drug fest where you have to like cheat it that's enough to like get the medal. And like even take like Lance Armstrong, he won like 7 times and then eventually they found out that he was using like drugs to cheat. This was like after the fact he had already like won 7 times.
Another thing a lot of people don't take into consideration is like how much money they have because some people can hire better personal trainers. They could hire better like nutritionists and stuff like that to really optimize their training and what they eat to just give themselves that like slight competitive advantage. And of course, there's no rules against that. They're saying, oh, you can't use these trainers, you can't do these workouts or anything like that. So, you see, it gets really like nitty gritty into these minute little details when it comes to like competition at the highest levels.
The thing with like sports at the highest level is that you really cannot do it as a hobby. If you want to reach the highest level, you have to like dedicate your life to it and don't do anything else besides that, like sports you're playing. And it's kind of sad too because a lot of people just burn out like really early, never reach it. And I saw an earlier documentary about the Russian figure skaters. And the women there, they were like pushed really hard when they were young. And they were like put on a very strict diet where they had to like keep a very strict weight to like be able to do the quads. And it was like basically like torture for them. So often they would like leave, and after they left, they ended up coming back because they weren't able to compete as well. And of course, this didn't last. Like it wasn't like sustainable for them. They could like only win until like 16, 18, something like that. But that was enough to like get the medal.
Yeah, exactly. So like these strict training regimens, they're not being banned by governing like the government or governing agencies of these sports fields. So like for what someone decides to inject themselves with, either estrogen or testosterone, I mean, come on now. It's just really stupid to like try to categorize these people. I mean, otherwise you would have, hundreds of different categories of competition. So
I mean, in wrestling, they do have a weight class system. Some like
honestly, I think that alone would solve a lot of issues, is having more weight classes for like different sports.
yeah, and the thing is, if we found out that, for example, there is like a problematic advantage that we don't want, we can just like add that to the system. So for example, let's say a female has like big breast and you have to like adjust based on that so she can go into like the lighter weight class anyway. And like if there is someone who like transition really late and we see like science showing that they have like a slight advantage, we can like add like 1 kilogram to their weight instead. So we can adjust based on that if we really want to. Like if we do have a weightless system, we can like solve any issue that really comes up.
Yeah, exactly. Because like say someone has like you said, I think bigger breasts, like that's just extra weight that's basically not useful to them. So I think maybe they would have to do it off of like lean muscle mass or something like that to really like, hey, this person has almost as much pound of or a kilogram of muscle mass as you do. And obviously they could have it like on a range. And at least that would be a little bit more fair.
Or we can simply like promote less physical sports. And honestly, it's actually more fun to watch. Like, I actually enjoy watching like esports more than like most like physical sports. Like, I never watched that stuff anyway. I sometimes watch snooker, see who's winning or whatever, and this is like not really about who is the strongest or not at all really. It's about who has the best precision. There's some strategy as well.
Yeah, I think bowling might actually be a good sport that possibly won't matter too much if you're whatever you're born as or if you decide to transition or not, because a lot of it's mostly skill. I mean, and I think any person of adult stature could relatively hold a bowling ball and be able to throw it down the lane. So I don't think it matters too much if you're on testosterone or estrogen or not.
I actually hate bowling by the way. I never liked that. It feels kind of meaningless.
I honestly don't like it either, but sometimes it's fun to watch because I suck at it.
Is there like any sports you would like to participate in?
Oh no, I don't play sports anymore. I'm too old. I'm too old and brittle. I would hurt myself.
I would like to like learn to like play snooker or something like that on a like a decent level. But it's like really hard to like find a table like near me. And they are really expensive to buy as well. I don't really have space for it either. But I would like to learn it. I don't think I could like compete at this point because I am too old to start now and like win a world championship. Obviously.
Yeah, sadly, a lot of it comes down to age, and I think starting something at 30 is just at that point just a hobby. I guess the only thing I would want to compete in would be chess, but then again, like people have been playing the game for decades, so they have decades of experience over me. They've learned openings and endings and closings that I don't know. So
I think what people get wrong about chess is that I think it's more about like intelligence than it really is. A lot of chess is about memorization. Like you memorize different position and like experience if you have played a lot of games to learn what types of position are like advantageous. And like the end game
yeah,
well, like the complex end game, like say for example bishop and knight, the checkmate. You can actually learn that and memorize every move in that scenario, and then you can like easily checkmate your opponent. But if you don't have that like memorization, like doing that spontaneously is going to be a challenge.
yeah, exactly. So I'm kind of just content with, I guess, my competitive lifestyle or lack of competitive lifestyle at this point. So yeah,
I actually play competitive shooting sometimes. It's a game called Assault Cube. It's an open source shooting game that I have like some people playing most of the time. But honestly, I'm not too good. Like I'm decent at aiming at some scenarios with like sniper and can like quickly shoot and kill that way. But like other than that, I'm not super good at it. But like it's kind of fun to like learn to play at that high level because like most video games are honestly too easy. Like especially all the single player garbage that is like boring and snooze fest. Nothing interesting going on. Like if you want a challenge, you really have to like fire up some multiplayer game and like go at it. But I do see people like getting obsessed with that a lot of the time, so I'm not sure what to think about it, if I really should recommend it to other people, because then they like spend like 8 hours a day playing that game and nothing else.
yeah, exactly. I think video games have their place in the world, but at the same time, they could really, I guess people could get really like, deep into them and spend countless hours spending on a video game when they could be bettering themselves in life. I don't know. Like, I think they're good just pass the time for leisure purposes, and that's about it.
What I do find strange though is how people like think that like physical sport is like way better than video games. And I will actually claim the exact opposite. You're not going to get like injured playing like a video game. You're not going to have like your head smashed or like your teeth knocked out or whatever. But with all those like physical sport that are like fairly confrontational, like ice hockey or rugby or American football. There are like so many sports where there are like constant fights and like injuries. Or like even if there isn't like a competition when people are pushing themselves really hard, they often get injured. Or even like just running, a lot of people like cannot handle that stress on the joints and everything.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to worry about breaking a bone or having a concussion or a seizure for the most part playing video games. I mean, unless you stayed up for, 48 hours staring at a screen, you should be fine.
Yeah, and the thing with like physical exercise is that they are not trying to win, then you can do it in a way that is safe. You don't overexert yourself. You make sure you're fine and everything. But if you are running to like finish a marathon or like getting a good time, you might push yourself more than really was good for you. This is maybe a problem if you're like putting too much into it.
Yeah, like that's a good point. I think overtraining, um, I think it's fine for maybe like once a week. If you're constantly overtraining, you're probably doing more harm than good. Speaking of which, I'm actually about to go work out myself. I think I'm gonna do legs and cardio today.
I hope that you will enjoy your exercise. And I think this marks the end of episode 46 of the Transmaxxing podcast. I hope that everyone will have a nice day forward, and if you do try sports, hopefully you will find something for you that you actually like and where you don't get injured or die. Goodbye, everyone!